You can do stuff on the fly, and things are going to be changing on stage and out here, and sometimes you have to do that because of time reasons, but if you have the time to set each channel individually and get a good tone setting, theoretically you can build. Okay, I've got a good drum sound. Do the kick and the snare, do an overhead. Good drums. Now do the bass. Okay, bass sounds good. Now bass and drums play together. Okay, I got a good mix between those two instruments. Okay, let's hear the guitars. Let's hear the keyboards, get that all set. Conga player play, just make sure the mic's on, because usually you don't need a mic on the congas anyway. It's too loud. He should probably be in the back room with the mic. But it's fun to hear the rhythm. And then you're going to put the vocals on top of that. Now, the vocals should be on top of the music. The music shouldn't overpower the vocals. We're here to hear the worship. And sure, the music's at least as important, but you want to be able to hear the words so people can sing along. It's really neat, I think, when you can hear the congregation about as much as the singers on stage. I mean, that's kind of a good way to judge level-wise, is you don't want the vocals to be so loud that they overpower the congregation. And you don't want the band to be so loud that they overpower the vocals. So, I mean, there's some dB level settings that are, you know, as I said, they vary from fellowship to fellowship, but if you can keep your worship somewhere in the 90 to 96 dB range, if you have a little dB meter, that seems to be acceptable for the most part. You can even pop up over that briefly and then come down. And then for teaching levels, about 72, 76 dB, essentially you want to be as loud as I am talking to you at 3 or 4 feet anywhere in the room. You want the teacher up there to be kind of like he's standing next to you, not right in your face and not 10 feet away. You don't want to strain. But that 72 to 76 is about what just a normal talker without amplification is. So, did that answer your question? How to set two? I set them all, but that's kind of it. And I slipped in the dB levels, your targets for music and worship. And any other questions?
Just a comment, as many people as will have access to the board, it may be good to say maybe where you leave it, what controls we're going to not touch, or what controls you can change so that the next person comes in, there's something wrong, he doesn't have to, oh, this is off, that's off.
Mm-hmm.
Go through that whole
Mm-hmm.
from complete in and out to figure out what the problem is.
Well, that may be good in some reality, but in this reality, you're probably stuck with just look at everything before you start. And I wouldn't go as far as saying zero out the board, was what we did now, is we set everything at zero, and we're going to kind of adjust things as we get wrapped up here today. But you just don't know that nobody touched a button. You can say that, but that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. Now, having said that, what I like to do, and we will do, is I like to dot the master at 0. I like to dot KP's mic where it's supposed to be, and all of his settings on that mic. Because if all else fails, and you muddle through worship, and you get through announcements, and you turn his mic on, and it squeals, it's like it negates everything else that you just got through. So his mic we're going to set, or you know, the podium mic or whatever, you'd set with a pretty consistent dotted level. Because EQ change up here, as we found yesterday, the high end was squeaking a little bit. Man, if somebody for whatever reason turned that up like that, you're going to get a pretty high squeaky feedback when you turn that mic on. So if you just go over here and look at his mic to make sure, yeah, that's where everything's supposed to be. And you can always go from those levels and tweak it if you need to. You can adjust the for whatever reason. Sometimes the room does change with temperature and humidity, or number of people in the room certainly does affect the sound. So what's good sounding with 200 people may seem kind of crisp with 50 people. So you can change it, but at least there's a nominal setting on that channel and on the master for getting kind of the teaching mic up and running without too much hassle. And the other answer is, yeah, get a digital board next time that has scenes on it that you can preset, or you can actually lock people out from being able to touch anything. That's pretty slick and several $1,000s more, but you know, it has applications where that does make the most sense. This is a situation where it would be nice if nobody touches it. They do, so what I'd like to see happen is that you get more familiar with what everything does. And I started out saying, you know, once you learn channel here, all these other channels are exactly the same. So you only have to really learn this one. You only really have to learn this one group channel, and then all these are essentially the same. Then you got a master output, and you've got some recording outputs here. So that's only like 3 or 4 things you have to learn. You just have to repeat it a number of times. And then you have to be able to look at it backwards, upside down, and plug stuff in, and label it so you can repeat it.
You have monitor 1, 2, 3, and 4. What are those up there?
You know, Lord is good. They're monitor 1, 2, 3, 4 on stage, labeled in the pockets.
Okay, but
If you turn up monitor 1, monitor 1 comes up if you've got a speaker plugged in. Monitor 2 is monitor 2. Monitor 3 is monitor 3. Monitor 4 is monitor 4. So we didn't re-engineer or revamp the whole system.
the way it's up there now, I mean, the one on the right side, which one is that?
Whatever one it's plugged in.
Okay, so we'd have to go.
Look and see what it is. Same thing as is all the are all the buttons in the same place I left them last time? Don't assume so. Go check, because it doesn't take a whole lot for somebody to go click, you know, move it over a step, and then all of a sudden, where's my monitor 3? I don't have anything here. Well, it's plugged in monitor 4. So unless you have that up, you wouldn't know that. So I mean, you kind of got to do at least kind of an overview and make sure things are set up. On some platforms, they get cleared off between Sunday and Sunday. So I mean, you're forced to reconnect everything, and it's almost a good idea to do that once in a while anyway. Just clean it off and sweep it and clean out the fuzz and stuff from the pockets and set it up again and check your cables and do maintenance every 6 years or as required. You know, it's usually like, we got to move now because everything's so messed up, we can't figure it out. Okay, we'll move to a new facility, and that works for now another 5 or 6 years. I've been to fellowships where everything gets added, nothing gets taken away. So, I mean, they replace the board, but they'll leave lots of old connectors and patch cords, and they just add on new cords to the old cords to go into the new board, and then another new board comes in and it changed again, so now you need another adapter, and it just adds on and adds on. So this installation was done professionally. It's nicely done. All the cables work, and a lot of times when something doesn't work, it is either not plugged in or the cable's bad. So that certainly is a place to check. If your monitors are labeled correctly, they should work correctly back there. If not, then because there is access to this area, you might check back there to make sure that the cable is plugged in where it's supposed to be.
And
To
the
that.
monitors, do we have to mess with those?
The
For in-ear?
The in-ears, well, the current plan is to set the in-ears up the same as this scheme. So going into the pockets, there are line jacks, XLR outputs that go through what's labeled now the TIE system, 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe. So that's going to be the same here. So you have the option of either using a speaker or using a monitor. Same number. Monitor 1 is monitor 1, or TIE 1 is monitor 1.
So
You can use
tie
it.
and in-ear is basically the same.
Yeah, you can't plug the in-ear into the speaker output with an adapter, but I mean, you could, but it would be painful. Yeah. And you can't just plug a speaker in the TIE output because it's not amplified, it's line level. But that seems to make the most sense rather than trying to repatch and do all that kind of stuff back here.
Is it still set up to throw a microphone on the stage somewhere independent of the mixer?
Well, that was mentioned to me. That hasn't been changed. It hasn't gotten any worse or any better. So, you know, whatever it was is the same way. And I do like that. That's kind of a neat feature to have just a general talk mic that you don't have to even turn this stuff on. But as I understand it, you have to turn this stuff on to get that to come on. So it's an interesting situation in that just the way the system was designed. If you come in here and the cover's on the board, and you turn the key, theoretically, if the guy or girl that finished using the board didn't turn everything off, you could have your one mic on and everything else up there live as well. So I think that's going to be that would be a good procedure when you get done at the end of a session to go ahead and pull everything down here. I don't necessarily mean you have to turn all the channels down, but certainly turning the groups down, keeping in mind that 0 is pretty much your beginning target anyway. That's easy enough to come in and put everything up to 0 with the exception of the effects end. So that's your starting spot, and then when you get done you could do this. And then your one mic would be on, and the likelihood is everything else would be pretty low. Actually, you know what would be good to do? Would be to get everybody in the habit of muting the channels. If at the end you unselect all the channels, that essentially does this, and it for sure mutes the monitors because none of the sends are going out. And then if they come in and turn on the system and plug in that mic jack on the stage, the announce mic, that will be the only live thing up there. So there you go. It's policy. Done. Mute. Mute at the end of use.
What about ringing or feedback, or are there any likely spots to
That
cause feedback? And what
never
if it starts
happens.
ringing?
Feedback doesn't occur here. Because the system's set up with a DSP, which is a digital signal processor, the room's been analyzed, it's been tuned. The only thing you can do if you get a ring is turn down a level on a mic, typically is where you'd get a ring. You can mess with the EQ a little bit and just make sure that there isn't something drastically turned up at that frequency bump. So either flatten it out or even make a little bit of a cut. It's simple to say, but it's hard to do, and that is if you have feedback, usually it's because the channel's fine, but the person using the microphone isn't talking very loud, and you keep pushing it. And a lot of inexperienced talkers, which KP doesn't fall into this group at all, and most pastors are pretty happy to talk loud. But if you get somebody who's a little bit shy or isn't used to being up talking in front of people and they hear themselves over a big system, they'll back up even further from the microphone. And a lavalier picks up pretty good when you're in a closed system, but if you have a live PA and a lavalier mic, you do still have to project pretty much into the room. Maybe a little bit more than if you were just talking to the guy next to you. You got to project a little bit. And so the best thing to do, if you can remember, is to go up to that person before they get up there and say, look, here's the situation. And just kind of go over the basics and say, you're going to hear yourself. That's fine. You got to talk loud or the people in back aren't going to be able to hear, and I'll make you go up and say it all over again. So that usually scares them enough to say it loud the first time and get it over with. And, you know, it's live, so you do what you can do. I think getting over the fear and phobia of messing something up takes you coming in during off hours or times when the auditorium is not being used and just play a CD, play the DVD, kind of learn how everything works. And it would be neat if, beyond you guys, if you kind of bring in some other people too every once in a while, you know, trick them into a cup of coffee and, hey, come on in, look at the soundboard. That's a bad segue, but to get more people used to it and a little bit familiar with it just helps broaden that knowledge base. So, I mean, it isn't hard once you learn it and do it for 30 years. It's a breeze. And then they come up with digital. But a lot of the technology has helped make good sound more available to churches. It's really not any more complicated than it ever was before. And a lot of certainly the sound system and the installations are so much better than they used to be that there isn't as much necessarily to do as far as EQ or feedback and that sort of stuff. And wireless mics have gotten a lot better. So just like a lot of other tools of the media business, they get smaller, they get a little bit better. They stay about the same price, it seems like, but it gives you a lot of flexibility that years ago, a board like this probably would have been $300,000, $400,000. Not that many years ago. And Now, the $300,000 or $400,000 boards make coffee and lattes for you. I mean, they do everything. So it is kind of neat what has come out of the minds of the technicians. Question was, do we control the on-off function of the lavaliers or the handheld mics? And the quick answer is, yeah, you probably should, just in case they forget to. And I do tell them to, mute their mic and stuff if they're going to go out and talk to people. You don't want to hear them out in the hallway telling their last fishing story and stuff like that. So, of course, then the problem is they forget to turn it on. And they'll start talking and they'll go, is this thing on? So, I mean, there's just a happy, make sure it works eventually and everything keeps going, and make sure the batteries are fresh and the wireless. That's always a major deal, to not have to go up in the middle of something because all of a sudden it starts getting, seem to lose signal, and it starts distorting when the battery goes down. But like I said, talking to somebody who's not experienced, it's good to talk about those things before. Maybe not every time, but if you get kind of a routine out, how to put the ear mic on and getting that position correctly, or even where to put a lavalier mic. It's not really good to have it down here at your belly button. You got to have it up kind of under your throat, really, about a hand away is what I usually go for.
I didn't know they had to be that close.
Yeah, it's better if it's that close because it's less likely to get whacked if I do this, and it picks up just fine. Up there, it actually gets a little throat noise going through there, so it sometimes has a little more low end than it would be if it was lower. Further away for my mouth is going to be thinner anyway, so this is closer. Just like that little E6 mic, it's good to get it about a finger back from the corner of the mouth.
Okay.
Never should it be in front because they're very sensitive to pops and peas and wind noise. So, the guys that have them sticking out like this, it's not really a vocal mic per se, which would be out front with a windscreen, like a regular mic on a stand. But that E6 should be down low and just behind the corner of the mouth, right there.